This presentation has been written to support Booklet 1 of the GCSE Germany course taught at Plymstock School. It is the first of 8 booklets that make up this element of the course, and it will be examined on its own in the first exam done with this particular course. Booklet 2, The Rise of the Nazis, will cover exactly the same timeline, but from the perspective of the rise of the Nazis. This booklet, however, deals with the Germany that fought in World War I, lost the war, sought an armistice, and then was treated as it was at the Treaty of Versailles. Before World War I, Germany was a young, powerful and wealthy country that was run as a dictatorship under its rule of the Kaiser. World War I saw Germany fight the combined strength of Britain, France, Russia and the United States. And until the last few months of the war, Germany looked like the likely winner. But then a series of bad harvests, an ongoing blockade and huge casualties took their toll. In November 1918, Germany agreed to an armistice, believing that she would be treated fairly. This did not happen and contributed to the fall of the Kaiser's government and the establishment of the democratic Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic emerged from the chaos of revolution and was tolerated and hated in equal measure. It was fair, tolerant, and ended World War I. But would that be enough to save the Weimar Republic? Underneath, a series of questions that students should be able to answer by the end of this booklet. So the course starts with Lesson 1, getting students to look at the nature of the defeat that Germany experienced in World War I and the way in which many Germans would want to interpret this. Sources A through to E get the children to speculate over the reason why Germany lost the war. Was it that Germany was stabbed in the back by its own government, the new Weimar Republic? Did the German army actually face a military defeat on the battlefield? Or did the war end because the suffering in Germany was more than the German nation could bear? The children and the elderly unable to put up with the consequences of the war any longer. Which of these 3 explanations for defeat would more proud Germans most want to believe in? Well, a military defeat would mean accepting that your army was beaten by a better enemy. Suffering in Germany would mean one would have to accept that the people were not strong enough. But the notion that you were stabbed in the back by your own government takes the responsibility away from you and places it onto the Weimar Republic. Remember, liked and loathed and liked in equal measure. Plenty of people quite happily prepared to accept the stab in the back theory. Source E from the Nazi Party even illustrates this. The brave German soldier stabbed in the back by their own government, not the enemy in front of them, the enemy behind them. So, your next question is, how on earth would that weaken the Weimar government? Well, if you are blaming your own government for defeating your own country, for stabbing it in the back, you're accusing your own government of being traitors. Germany is unpopular anyway. The Weimar Republic, unpopular. To accuse it of stabbing its own country in the back and being traitors as well is more than many people would be willing to accept in their own government. And the Nazis take this on board and link the idea of the stab in the back to the Weimar government, but also the Jewish element of the Weimar government. So with this story in place now, students in less than 100 words can write a summary of the events leading up to the foundation of the Weimar Republic. Germany is beaten. Germany asks for an armistice. The armistice is given, but the condition for the armistice is that the Kaiser must leave. Germany is now left without a dictator. Germany is used to dictatorship. With no one telling the Germans what to do, chaos reigns. Out of that chaos emerges parties of the far left, the far right, and the centre ground of democracy. And it's the Weimar Republic, the democratic Weimar Republic, that emerges, loathed by the left and the right, and tolerated by the centre, the democracies. So, all these political terms, how do they all relate to each other? Well, the idea behind this lesson is that students will be able to place these key terms onto a diagram we call the political spectrum, which in its own turn will help explain the chronology of the events that happen after the formation of the Weimar Republic and the relationship between each of the groups. So briefly, students are to use the gap fill to complete stage 1. Make sure they understand each of the key groups. The Spartacists are the communists. The Freikorps are the ex-soldiers. The Weimar Republic is a liberal republican party believing in democracy. The Nazi Party, an extreme right-wing group. Democracy, a political system where all individuals are equal. And a dictatorship, a country governed by one strong absolute ruler. Now at this point, before we embark upon the story of the Weimar Republic, one has to remember that the Germans are used to democracy. A dictatorship, I beg your pardon, not democracy. Therefore, any experimentation with democracy is going to be novel. Okay, so we now use the diagram to explain the story. The Kaiser leaves and Germany descends into chaos. The left, the right and the centre all struggling for power. From this chaos emerges the Weimar Republic, a democracy. The Treaty of Versailles has made this country weak. So the Weimar Republic is not a strong government. It's not liked by many in its own country. So in 1919, the Spartacists, the German communists, attempt to seize power. They don't like the Weimar Republic. Look how far apart they are from each other. The Weimar Republic, unable to defeat the Spartacists, turn to the extreme right and ask the Freikorps, right-wing soldiers, made unemployed by the Treaty of Versailles, to help them. Now equally, the Freikorps have no love for the Weimar Republic, but look how far away they are from the Spartacists. This is bad enough for the Freikorps. That's unacceptable. So the Freikorps defeat the Spartacists. Empowered, however, by their victory, in 1920, the Freikorps, led by Wolfgang Kapp, attempt to seize power over the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic, again unable to fight, asked the workers, situated over here to the left, to help the Weimar Republic defeat the Freikorps, which they do. On both occasions, the Weimar Republic is shown to be weak because groups rise up and rebel against it. But on both occasions, the Weimar Republic is shown to be strong by still managing to survive by using its brains rather than brawn. In 1923, the year of crisis, it's the Nazis that attempt to seize power. Again, look how far apart they are from the Weimar Republic, explaining their dislikes. Many of the Freikorps will go on to become members of the SA, linked to the Nazi Party. So the rule of the diagram: the nearer you are to a group on the spectrum, the more likely it is that you will get on. The further apart, the more likely you will want to kill each other. So in 1919, the Spartacists attempt to rise up against the Weimar Republic and establish a dictatorship of the left. But it fails. Leadership that's never really leading. It's not in charge. The uprising was spontaneous. It was poorly planned. Poorly planned, spontaneity, meant that there was no time to mobilize support. And the Freikorps, well, they were ex-soldiers. They were brutal and they were organized. Students need to identify which one they think is the most important, color-coded. This introduces the idea of a hierarchy. Despite its victory, the Weimar Republic is weakened because strong popular governments are not attacked by their own people. But please note, the way in which they skillfully survive would suggest that they were clever. We now move on to the Weimar Constitution, the rules by which Germany would be governed. Germany had always been used to being a dictatorship. Therefore, one would expect a type of democracy, if it was going to be tried in Germany, to be one that provides a strong, centralized government. They didn't do this. The Weimar Constitution was based upon what the Germans believed were the weaknesses in democracies elsewhere in the world and tried to make the fairest form of democracy the world had ever seen. Most notably, the Weimar Republic adopted a form of electing governments called proportional representation, where a party's percentage share of the vote gave them that equal percentage of seats. It's a very fair form of government and electing a government, but it led to a series of governments that never gained majorities, and therefore parties had to work together to form coalitions. Coalitions are fair, but coalitions are made up of politicians who initially can't agree. Put them under pressure, one would expect a coalition to collapse. What Germany needs in the 1920s is strong government. It's not going to get that with proportional representation. This can be illustrated here. And additionally, the Constitution included Article 48, which rather ambiguously said that if there was a national emergency, the Chancellor, the democratically elected Chancellor, can run the country without consulting the German Parliament, the Reichstag, essentially making a democratic Chancellor an unelected dictator. It fails to define what the national emergency will be. Later in our story, we will find out that Adolf Hitler determines that the burning down of the Reichstag in 1933 is that national emergency. So we have a constitution with the president voted by the people, who appoints the chancellor, also voted by the people, who has his power base in the Reichstag, and who is elected by the people, all men and women over the age of 18. The German president controls the German armed forces. Key to note here when we move on to booklet 3 is that the position of the Chancellor as the second most powerful man in Germany means nothing because the President at any point can fire him. So why did the Germans dislike the Treaty of Versailles? Well, remember, they agreed to an armistice expecting to be treated fairly. It was the British, Americans and the French who changed the rules. The Germans would be punished according to 4 criteria: land, army, money and blame. Germany lost 20% of her land and all of her overseas territories. The Germans disliked this because would you want that done to your country? Many Germans found themselves living outside Germany. The army reduced Germany to a second-rate power. It's a big problem for the Germans because their national pride is insulted. The military were a strong part in German life. And Germany will not be able to defend herself. Germany had to accept the blame, despite many Germans believing the war was one of self-defense. This would leave Germans angry and humiliated. And money, otherwise known as reparations, bankrupted Germany, with the Allies setting a figure that was simply impossible to pay. This caused a problem because it bankrupts Germany and brings about economic disaster and chaos in the 1923 year of crisis. As we talked earlier, in 1920, Wolfgang Kapp leads the Freikorps into a march on Berlin. The army, on the right wing of German politics as well, please mark them in on your spectrum, did nothing because the army did not fight on their ex-brothers-in-arms. The government, unable to stop the Freikorps, called on the workers to go on strike, and the strikes brought the Freikorps putsch and the Kapp putsch to a stop. So we now know that the Weimar Republic uses the right wing to crush the left in the Spartacist putsch and the left wing to crush the right in the Spartacist putsch. It shows that the Weimar Republic are remarkably adept and intelligent politicians, able to manipulate people to do their own work for them, but weak in the sense that they cannot do it on their own. So, we talked about reparations, paying back the damage done in the war. Germany does this until 1923, when Germany is bankrupted by her payments. She no longer has the money to pay the French and the British and the Americans. So Germany, by 1923, is paying for her debts, not in money, but in goods. But in 1923, Germany can't even sustain this. Germany has run out of money. Because Germany defaults on her payments, the French invade the Ruhr, the German industrial heartland. In doing that, the Germans can't stop them because they have no power. So the Germans then decide that what they will do is simply not cooperate. Passive resistance. The passive resistance requires the German government to print money to pay the workers who are on strike. Now, as the lesson on hyperinflation taught you, you simply can't print money. Printing money dilutes the value of the money, not generates more money. You pour water into the juice, you're not making more juice, you're making weaker juice or poorer cash. So, hyperinflation starts to set into the German system. Prices go up to compensate for the money not being worth as much. More and more money is printed to pay for the workers who are on strike. Hyperinflation. So what caused hyperinflation is Germany defaulting on her reparations payments. It destroys savings that people might have. People on fixed incomes are going to find themselves poor very quickly. Wages had to be paid on the hour before the money lost its value, or alternatively, wages weren't paid at all, you were paid in goods. Keeping your money in your pocket was stupid because your money was becoming worthless, and the only saving grace is that it destroyed debt. Debt remained fixed, but money lost its value and money went up in terms of how much money you carried on you. You pay off your debts quickly. The middle classes had their savings wiped out in 1923. They'd also experienced the same thing in 1918. If this is what democracy does to your savings, you can see why they are tempted by dictatorship in 1933. So, who saves the Weimar government? 1923 was the year of crisis. Gustav Stresemann rescued the German nation. The old money was burnt and a new currency introduced. Left-wing state governments were removed. The army became on the Weimar Republic's side. Germany renewed her payments and negotiated the Dawes Plan of 1924 to enable the German economy to restart. This issues in the golden era, the golden years of the Weimar Republic from 1924 to 1929. Germany agrees her borders, gets accepted into the League of Nations, welcomed back as one of the big powers, has money pouring into Germany. Yes, it has to be repaid, but the economy restarts. And in 1929, an additional loan is agreed from the Americans. The Weimar Republic was very tolerant and very liberal. German culture flourished. Berlin was the place to be, but there were many conservative and traditional Germans who were shocked at what they thought the Weimar Republic represented. Therefore, we have to realize that despite the golden era, the political problems that Germany faced were still there. An unpopular government, democracy that was disliked, a government that paid the Treaty of Versailles, which everyone in Germany disliked, weak coalition governments. Okay, during the golden era, but what happens if things turn bad? And of course, the economic problems. The problems that Germany is facing are hidden behind the American loans. Stresemann himself said, throughout the golden era, 24 to 29, that Germany is dancing on the edge of a volcano. Between 24 and 29, the German Weimar government recovered and stayed in power because people felt prosperous and optimistic. But they were papering over the cracks.